My name is Kelle. I'm Kelle Rhoads. I'm the eldest child of the Rhoads family, which also produced my younger brother, Randy Rhoads. We're talking today a little bit about my family history, about my music, about my brother's music. I actually compose music that's principally for the pianoforte. I create abstract classical music. I use primarily pianos, but I also incorporate other components, voices, horns, cellos, violins, car accidents, different background noises, and all kinds of other things that go into the mix to make my music. The Conservatory of Music that my mother started in 1948 is still in existence, and we still continue to teach students. That is located in the Valley Village section of North Hollywood in California. School was started in 1948. My mother was 28 years old when she started the school. She's retired from public life. I run the school now, our 65th year of continual operation. Randy started playing guitar when he was about 6, and that would have made me about 11 and a half. And I really didn't start playing drums until I was 12. So it might very well be that Randy actually started taking lessons and playing guitar before I became a drummer. I don't remember it that way, though. I remember being a drummer and then influencing my brother and sister to take up a musical instrument. Well, in our family, it was really not a question of whether you're going to do that or not. It was just a question of when. It's possible that he actually started playing before I did, but I dare say that I was a pretty big influence for him. Being 4.5 years older than him, you can imagine that the older brother's tastes would have rubbed off a little bit. The way that I started, as far as my musical training was concerned, is I saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show in 1964. And I went to my mom and I said, "You know, Mom, I'd like to play the drum." And she said, you want to play one drum? And I said, "Yeah, I want to play the bass drum." And she said, "Well, you have to play more than the bass drum. You have to play the drum set." And I said, "Oh, okay." So I learned how to play drums. My sister was playing acoustic guitar. My brother was playing acoustic guitar. What happened was my sister didn't stick with it. She didn't really pursue a musical career like my brother and I did. He stayed with the acoustic guitar for a while until eventually he came to my mom and said, "You know, Mom, I'd like to play the lead guitar. I'd like to learn how to play lead guitar." So she set him up with a fine guitar teacher that we had, and every Friday for 9 months he took a lesson. Now at the end of 9 months, his name was Scott. Scott went to my mom and said, "You know, Mrs. Rhoads, I really can't teach your son anymore." And my mom says, "Well, why would that be, Scott?" And Scott says, "Well, I'm going to be honest with you." He goes, "I've taught him everything I know weeks ago, because I've been working with him now, and actually he's been teaching me. I don't understand it anymore. I don't understand what he's showing me. I can't do what he's doing." So those 9 months of taking a guitar lesson was the only formal training he had for electric guitar. Now, some people are probably thinking, well, wait a minute. I heard stories that he would go and pay professors to teach him guitar. That's true at the end of his life, but that was something that happened in conjunction with classical guitar, not electric guitar. Those 9 months of electrical guitar lessons was his entire education outside of what he taught himself. Everything else he learned by listening, by watching, and by imitating. And then, eventually, his own style emerged. In 1972, I was starting to get to the point where I was making my transition from drums to being a singer. You know, it's kind of like a criminal. Strike one was drums. Strike two was vocals. Strike three, that's piano. That's my last chance. But I think I'm going to stick with that. I can't see ditching the piano to play something like flute or tuba. I really think I'm going to probably just stay the course and stick with piano the rest of my life. I decided I want to be the singer. I looked like a singer. Everybody thought I was a singer. But I wanted to be the singer in rock bands. Didn't want to play drums anymore. My brother was really upset about that. He wrote on a cardboard piece of paper, "Kelle sucks as a singer." And he put it in our garage so I'd see it. But nevertheless, I'm pretty stubborn, so I decided I would do it anyway. And I was in a band with a cat called Sick Eddie Perry. Eddie was out of New Jersey, and he had a band called Skull, and he took me on. He said, you know, you could sing in my band. So I said, okay. So he takes me home from rehearsal one day, and we're parked in front of my mother's house, where we all grew up and where she still lives. And he said, hey man, he goes, you hear that? And I go, what? And he goes, you hear that? He goes, this guy's gonna be one of the greatest guitar players that ever lived. And I said, what? You mean my brother? I go, that's my little brother in there. Well, I was a little bit shocked. I said, do you really mean that? This is way even before Quiet Riot days. So he said, yeah. He said, there's no doubt. This guy's going to be a monster. This guy's going to spawn a legion of guitar players that look up and emulate him. And I said, are you being straight with me? Does he owe you money or something? He goes, no. He goes, you'll see. And he was right. Randy was influenced by Alice Cooper, UFO, Widowmaker, bands that had some punch, you know, early Scorps. He went away and he worked with Ozzy. When he came back for a break, he did, and he had I don't know what you would call it. It's not a record that's out yet. It's like the record, but it doesn't have any artwork. It doesn't have anything. I guess you would call it rough mixes, but they really were more advanced than just rough mixes. So we put that Blizzard of Oz record on, and everybody in the family was like, holy fuck. Somebody let the genie out. The year before he passed, not the Christmas right before he passed, but the Christmas before that, Ozzy comes over to the house and party's going on. No Ozzy. So I says to Randy, where's Ozzy? What's he doing? And he said, I think he's in my room. So I went in his room and he had a bottle of cognac. And he was, there was a bed and he was with his back against the bed and he was listening to Blizzard of Oz over and over and over again, and he was crying. And I said, Ozzy, I go, you know, what do you need? You know, join the party, you know? And he just looked up to me and he said, I can't fucking believe I'm in this band. And he was listening to the record from start to finish. Then he'd start it again. Then he'd start it again. I would say that I really noticed Randy's talent when I heard what he did with Ozzy. I would say that that's when I first noticed his great talent as a guitar player. Randy played the guitar all the time. There was 3 times in his life that he didn't play guitar: when he ate a sandwich, when he took a shower, and when he masturbated. Other than that, he played guitar all the time. It wasn't practice for Randy. The guitar was an extension of him. I can remember my sister and my brother and I watching TV and my sister going, please shut up. Don't play the guitar for a while or go in the other room. We're watching TV. It was almost an extension of him. Randy just really played all the time. If he heard something, he played it. We were rehearsing in a facility in Burbank on Front Street. It's called Visions Rehearsal Studio. My band was there. I had a drinking problem. Actually, my drinking problem was that I could never get enough to drink. And I was, I thought I was recording my own band. Took a little break, went out, sat on the sidewalk, and I had my little recorder with me that I always used to take to rehearsal. And I guess I ended up passing out, and I left the recorder to run. Randy was in there with some people. I don't want to really explain who the people he was there with, but nevertheless it was him. And I actually captured him on tape doing a wicked blues, just an amazing blues solo. Which is proof for the people that think that when he made the transition from Quiet Riot to Ozzy, that he got so much better. And he did. But the fact is, he always had it. He was always endowed with the talent that always shone through when he played. His tone, too, was always the same, regardless of what he played through. Next morning, I listened to the tape, and I find out that it's not my band, it's my brother. So I kept it. And I decided one day I would use it, but I didn't know how I would use it. A couple of years down the line, I become a composer, and I start writing classical music, abstract classical music. And lo and behold, I decide, since my brother and I kind of got into this thing together, we were in a band called Violet Fox when we were teenagers. I decided that I wanted the last thing on record to be with us too, because that's how it started. So I built a piece of music around him, and it's the fifth piece of music. It's called the Radio Sequence on my second release, which is called Portraits of Oblivion. Fifth track, Radio Sequence. And the blues solo that you hear, Randy. Hot July, 1971, Alice Cooper. Well, I wanted to turn my brother on to Alice Cooper. I'd been into Alice Cooper for a couple of years. So I insisted that he and Kelly Garney's like my other little brother. He's somebody that Randy took home from school when he was 11 years old, and we've known him and been close to him ever since. I took those guys, I'm about 4.5 years their senior. I took them down to see Alice Cooper. When Randy heard about that, he goes, "So we're going to see Alice Cooper, huh?" Randy thought that Alice was a folk singer. And he said, "Well, what kind of music does she do?" And I said, "You'll see what kind of music she does." So here's Alice Cooper in 1971. A place called the Long Beach Auditorium. It was an old vaudeville hall. It's long gone. And I noticed all these debutantes, these women sitting in the front with sashes that say like Miss Long Beach, Miss Burbank, whatever. And Alice Cooper comes out, and while he's singing, he's drinking and he's spitting beer on them. And my brother looks at me like, "Is this for real?" And the concert's going on. And at the end of it, he was absolutely mesmerized. He was catatonic. Him and Kelly couldn't even talk. They were just staring blankly at the stage. And that was the turning point. That's when my brother said, "You know what? I can do this." is just as good. Big influence on my brother. Alice's lead player was Glenn Buxton. Big influence. Something clicked. He said, I can do this. I can look like this. I can be this. I've met Alice Cooper on a couple of different occasions. Comes full cycle. The last time I had a discussion with him, he said that had Randy lived, he said there isn't anybody in the world he would rather have as a lead player than Randy. And I was thinking to myself, I sure hope you're listening to this, man. This is incredible. This is full circle. I mean, imagine back in the day if Alice said, I want you to be the lead player. And yet that would have been his foremost choice. The metal band that I was in that got the most mileage, we toured, support act for Foghat, went to Europe, played all over, was a metal band called Rhoads. And when I met them, they were called Emerald. The reason that I insisted that they change the name was not for egotistical reasons, believe it or not. It was because I'd been in a couple of other bands and I was kicked out because they thought I sucked. Oh, I looked the part, but I really couldn't sing very good. My mom remedied that. She got me a great vocal coach, and that pretty much straightened out the situation. That and some patience. The metal band that I would say that got the most, you can go on the internet right now and take a look at a French television's filming of that band. There's another piece of film that's out there in that band. We kind of had a theme of green and black, so we did the Green Manalishi, which was a Fleetwood Mac song that Judas Priest covered. Before that, I was in a band that played locally a lot called Street Kids. Street Kids had a guitar player that was my favorite of Randy's students. Randy had a lot of students. He spawned legions of up-and-coming guitar players with his teaching. Very passionate about teaching. And this guy's name was Steve Sonneborg, and I was in a couple of different bands with him. About 14, 15 years ago that I decided that it was actually kind of an epiphany. I woke up one day and I said to myself, wow, I've been on the right highway, but I took the wrong off-ramp. Forget this drums business. Forget this singing business. I want to compose classical music. I want to compose classical music like nobody else does. I want it to be mine and mine alone. And I want it to be principally focused on the pianoforte. That brings us up to date. That's what I do now. I have 3 records that sell all over the world. Hence, I'm here in Newfoundland. The first was released in 2005. It's a piece that's a 3-part or 3-movement piano composition that concerns the making, the voyage, and the demise of the Titanic. Second CD came out in 2007. Subsequently, it's my favorite, and that's called Portraits of Oblivion. My third release came out in March 2011, and it's called Pride and Profanity. The next release is scheduled for a May 2014 release, and it is called Magnificent Obsession. Some of the bands that meant the most to us were the bands that were, like, for example, some of the British bands that came a little bit later on. Of course, everybody likes the Beatles, blah, blah, blah. Randy liked Elvis a real lot. I would have to say that some of the biggest influences were Mott the Hoople, David Bowie. We were kind of into bands with a hard edge, too. Widowmaker. My friend Bob Daisley was in that band. A little bit later on in life, him and Randy would cross paths, and Ozzy. There was also UFO, Scorpions. I like real early Scorpions. A huge influence on my life is the Rolling Stones, but particularly between the period of 1969 and 1972. I would say that the bands that we kind of gravitated towards were the ones that kind of visually and musically had kind of a hard edge and kind of like were a little bit off center. They wouldn't have been, you know, your typical like Journey and Kansas and stuff like that. I like those bands, but those weren't the bands that we would listen to over and over and over and over again. Certainly Aerosmith. The thing is, people ask me a lot of times who my influences are. They think I'm going to say some of the great composers. I like to listen to them, but I'm not influenced by them. I'm influenced by going to galleries and looking at art. What I interpret in my work is I interpret what art sounds like. My music is a conversion from an artistic piece, like a painting or a sculpture, or even a beautiful pastoral scene. But some of the early influences with Randy and I were very, very, very close. So we got along for about 5 minutes in a band we started called Violet Fox. And that band was very, very, very hard-edged. I mean, we did Alice Cooper, and we did some stuff that was like pretty. It definitely wasn't pop music. Let's just say that. And we would put these little shows on in the conservatory that my mom started, and invite 50, 60, maybe 70 kids down. And that was the start of it for us. That was where it all started. When I see that room that we played in today, when I look at Bob Daisley's book, For Fact's Sake, which I highly recommend, the books that I would tell people that they should read if they want to learn about my brother is first and foremost a book by Kelly Garney, his bass player in Quiet Riot. His first one is a book called Angels with Dirty Faces. You can get that on Amazon. Another really, really, really good book is called For Fact's Sake. It just came out by Bob Daisley. And in that book, there's a picture of Randy and I from Violet Fox giving a concert in the big room at the school. Looking in that book, Bob Daisley's book, seeing my picture in there and thinking about that, going back all those years, it's an amazing journey. It's so surreal and so unlikely that this would happen to somebody. You've got any moment in time where there are literally millions of guitar players. And here's this skinny little kid from Burbank that not only becomes a great guitar player, he becomes an icon. Steve Vai says that Randy raised the bar and then painted it. He's somebody who did something that, besides Hendrix and maybe Jimmy Page, just doesn't get done. It's so rare and so special to be able to get to this exalted, iconic level. And yet, that's my little brother who I wanted to beat the shit out of. I can honestly say that I've met all the shittiest people in my life through the music business. It is the largest cauldron of snakes you'll ever find. We were raised in a Christian background, and I can tell you my brother and I as well have been absolutely appalled on a constant basis of the depravity associated with the music business. But what if it gets in your blood? What if a couple of kids start jamming and it becomes more than an obsession? It's something that they not only love to do, it's something they have to do. Well, that means you got bit by the bug. So there's a couple of things. Listen to your old Uncle Kelle. There's a couple of things that you need to know. First of all, I know a lot of you aren't going to want to hear this, but you need to have an alternate profession. Because even the musicians that are in really big top bands don't work all the time. There's downtime. There's time between recording albums. There's time between tours. You're busy, you're working 24 hours a day, and then maybe a month or two, 3, whatever, you don't work at all. So find something else you sort of like. I know, it's music or bust, nah, this is what I'm gonna do. This is do or die. I can dig it. I've been there. I tried to get out. Listen, I'm guilty. I was a milkman once. I even drove milk trucks and juice trucks. And I'm gonna tell you, when you got the bug, it doesn't work. You'll get back into it somehow. There's no friends in the music business. I know, you're jamming with little Johnny down the street. You guys are gonna make it big together and stuff like that. Well, wait till he fucks your girlfriend. It won't happen. There's no friends in the music business. It's very, very important, if you're gonna stay in the music business, to reinvent yourself periodically and follow your own script. If I was still trying to sing Alice Cooper songs, being an old fat man like I am now, I would be ridiculous. It would be like women that go to a bar that dress the way they did when they were 14, but they're 55. Nothing could be sillier. If you're going to stay in the music business, you need to reinvent yourself. Do different things. Branch out. Try different kinds of music. I went from being a singer to a drummer to a classical piano player. But that way you stay on float. Because if you don't, you're like in a boat that's got a small hole in it. And eventually it gets bigger. And then you have to bail more water. And pretty soon you get so ridiculous you just die and you fuck off, and then that's the end of the story. But if you keep reinventing yourself, you skip around. You walk over the river, but you walk on the rocks. And it's good. You can get there that way. So, a little bit of a metaphor here, but what you want to do is you want to stay true to yourself. And then you don't want to be one way to someone and another way to someone else. You want to stick to your script. You want to be the person that you imagine yourself being. And you want to stay true to that person. And people will respect you. They really will, if you stay true to who you are. That's about all this old man has to say for right now. So I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to say good luck to all. And, if you got to play with it. Play with your whole heart. And don't let anybody tell you not to.